Marta, this week we talk about
donkeys,
Dwayne's,
and dads.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to This Week at the Gathering.
At Scott Memorial, UMC.
There it is. We need the whole name. Marta, you're pinch hitting for Kelly, who, as far as we know, might or might not have had a baby yet. I don't know. We are anxiously waiting to see baby.
Baby watch.
Yeah.
Speaking of babies, oh my goodness, you know what today is?
What is, no.
Today's Father's Day.
Ah! Yes.
Father's Day. We're gonna honor you today.
Thanks. I feel honored. Marta, I gotta tell you, there's nothing that beats being a dad.
Yes.
And nothing of seeing your little girl, I have a daughter, grow up from infant to now she's 10, and hearing those 3 words, Marta, that mean the most to me, where's mommy at? Outside, if you forgot to honor your father, here's what I want you to do. Take your keys, take his keys, go outside, have a teenager wash the car, help a teenager fund a missions trip, and get a clean car. Marta, there's nothing better.
There's nothing better watching your child grow up and a car wash. So we have some opportunities for you. If you're interested in reading, we have 2 book clubs going on this summer. One is at the Bad Coffee Shop.
Where, Marta, whoa, where is that?
The Bad Coffee Shop.
The Bad Coffee Shop?
Bad Coffee Shop.
Wow, the Bad Coffee Shop.
That's right. And it's Beneath the Scarlet Sky. That one's on Monday, June 25th at 6:30 at Bad Coffee. And then the other one is The Broken Way. Not nearly as cool a place, but it's Mondays at 7.
Here at the church. Marta, my favorite action hero, Dwayne The Rock Johnson, just put a movie out called Rampage this summer. And I heard you are quite the fan of Dwayne The Rock Johnson.
Yes, he makes my heart pitter.
Speaking of Rampage, Rolling River Rampage is not a movie. It is VBS this year, Marta.
That's right. It's very exciting. That's our July 16th through the 20th.
Yep, and we are making decorations for said VBS on June 24th. So if you want to maybe make a picture of Dwayne The Rock Johnson, June 24th is your chance. Come on out, it'd be fun.
Love you, Justin.
Now it's time for Notable
Notes.
All
right, so feed the soul and the belly. Let's help the Penn Ministry feed the homeless.
Connectional Garden needs to be weeded.
Food pantry collection items. We need canned tuna, pork, and beans, and canned pears. And if you could bring some bug spray for Penn Ministry. So, Eric.
Hi.
Hey, how are you?
Good.
So, do you like to get messy?
That was my nickname in high school.
Eric
Messy Greaves.
Nice, very cool. Well, we have an opportunity here at the church on June 29th to come meet God, have some dinner, and get messy.
Yeah, how do we get messy?
So you get messy by engaging in these great activities that Rachel has planned for us. Bring your kids and some empty mason jars.
Lots of fun.
Woo!
Messy church.
Messy church.
Now it's time for Quotable Quotes.
My father used to say that it's never too late to do anything you wanted to do. And he said, you never know what you can accomplish until you try. Michael Jordan.
Good evening and welcome to the gathering at Scott Memorial Home Edition. You know, when I think about this crazy journey of faith and what it looks like to follow God in the wilderness of my life, I'm reminded of Bible stories that I read all the time as a kid, stories that would comfort or encourage or inspire me. And sometimes I feel like there's nothing new to learn from, Jonah and the whale, Noah's Ark, or David and Goliath. But today we're going to take a deeper look at the story of David and Goliath, because what I love about Scripture is even as an adult, even as a pastor, I can go back and read some of these classic stories and still learn more. There are always deeper levels and layers of meaning for us to uncover if we don't give up, if we keep reading and keep seeking God in all of God's holy word. So what do we have to learn about the story of David and Goliath that can help us on our journey with God in the wilderness? Well, there are 10 life lessons that we can glean from the story, beginning in 1 Samuel chapter 17. So a little bit of background, right? Who was David? Well, he was the youngest of 8 boys, which meant that he had a really rough future ahead of him before he was anointed and set apart as king, which all happens, by the way, before he even takes down Goliath. back in those days, your firstborn son is the one that inherited most of your stuff, right? Your title, your wealth, your power, your notoriety. And so if you have 8 boys, by the time you get to the 8th, like David knew he was going to kind of have to make his own future happen. He was going to have to be intentional about what he was going to do with his life. And so he had to learn a craft. So he was a shepherd. He helped take care of the sheep. He wasn't especially strong. He wasn't especially tall. He wasn't especially smart. The only thing that people notice early on in his life that even Goliath notices is he's kind of cute. You know, he's a little bit of a hottie, which in no way makes him a great and spectacular king. What makes David stand apart as a leader is the fact that he's described throughout Scripture as being a man after God's own heart. What he loved and cared about more than anything else was God, God's plan, God's will, God's truth. And then we look at Goliath. You know, who was Goliath? Well, we all know he's tall, right? So he was 6 cubits and a span, which means about 9 feet tall. Although Joyce Baldwin is another scholar who in her footnote on her commentary on this story notes that 2 Masoretic texts have a variant of that saying he was only 4 cubits in a span, which is like 6.5 feet. So being a Duke fan myself, there is a small chance Goliath was actually shorter than all 3 of the Plumley brothers. So go Duke. But Goliath was tall. He was fearsome. He's described as a champion, which is a very unique word in Hebrew. That means this guy really knew what he was doing. He knew how to take lives. He knew how to go to battle. And he had the Mercedes-Benz of armor, okay? It goes into detail beginning in verses 4 in 1 Samuel 17 about all the amazing armor that Goliath had to help him in battle, including something that was very unusual for other soldiers in the day, and it was bronze greaves, which are, it's like a fancy way of saying a metal shin guard to protect like every inch of Goliath's body, right? Was shielded. He even had a guy to carry his massive shield as he went into battle. So we have faced or will face in the future our own types of Goliaths, right? We will all come up against obstacles, challenges, people, situations that are bigger and badder than we are. And when we face those challenges, most of us, I dare say, will respond the way the Israelite army did when they saw Goliath issue his challenge, saying, listen, don't let all the Israelites and all the Philistines go at it and kill each other. Send me one good man to come and challenge me. Winner takes all. Whichever one of us dies, all of his people will be in bondage, slavery, servitude to the winning team. So who are you going to send my way? And the Israelites responded the way most of us do when we face Goliaths of our own. They were afraid. They were terrified, the text tells us. They would get ready for battle day in and day out for 40 consecutive days, but no one would talk. No one would accept the challenge. They just ignored Goliath there on the field. And sometimes we think if we ignore those massive issues, those obstacles of evil or injustice that are staring us down, that eventually they will just go away. But that, my friends, is not the way that Goliaths work. And so while the army, including David's 3 oldest brothers, are terrified and afraid and hiding, we see that David's dad asked David to leave the sheep behind under the care of someone else and to take some bread to his brothers, some cheese to the commanding officers, and to bring Daddy Dearest back some word as to how the boys are doing. How's the battle going? Are you coming home soon? So David gets there and he hears Goliath issuing his taunts and demanding that someone come out and fight him. And David does something that no one else in the Israelite army, not even King Saul, had done to that point. He reacts, right? And he starts questioning, trying to figure out more about what's going on. And this moves us into the 10 life lessons that we can learn from how David handled it when he first encountered Goliath. The first thing we learn is that when you speak up, when you even ask questions about an evil or injustice, a Goliath in your path, expect pushback, right? David gets up there and he basically says to the other soldiers, hey, who is this guy? Why hasn't someone done something about him and, wiped him off the face of the earth? What has King Saul said he'll do for the guy that actually accepts this challenge and gets the job done? Because we all know that God is going to be on the side of whoever challenges Goliath. And so the soldiers are saying, oh yeah, the king will really take care of whoever can beat this guy, but none of us want to be the guy that takes on Goliath. And so as David is asking these questions, his oldest brother Eliab says, David, who do you think you are? And what are you doing here? You don't belong here. You're a runt. You're a little boy. Go home and watch your sheep. The battlefield is not for you and it's not for spectators. So when we ourselves in our own lives try to face evil, injustice, or oppression, expect people, even in your family, even close to you, even in your circle of friends, to say, "Who do you think you are? This is not your place. Just go home." Thankfully, David didn't listen. Life lesson number 2 is when you speak up, when you ask questions, when you stand in the truth, expect higher ups to hear about it. Okay, so we also read that after David starts asking questions of the soldiers, someone reports to King Saul what David is talking about. And immediately he's there having a private meeting with King Saul so that his own questions can be answered and Saul can figure out who this guy is that is speaking up and ready to stand against Goliath. So people who have a unique voice, people who do speak up tend to stand out, and other people hear about them. The third life lesson that we learn from Saul's interaction with David as they're talking is that, and this is true for all of life, not just when we face Goliaths, but when you're going to complain about something or make a request for some kind of change, offer a solution, and a solution that involves your own effort, right? So David didn't go in and say, "What kind of king are you? Why aren't you the one out there leading us, representing us, killing Goliath?" He doesn't go challenging or attacking the king. He goes and he says, in essence, "Put me in, coach. Like, let me do it. I'm ready. I know what has to be done, and I'm not afraid. Let me be a part of getting the job done." And so lesson 4 is to be prepared when you do stand up, when you offer a solution that involves your effort, be prepared to be questioned. Be prepared to be told no. You know, King Saul said, "Kid, I don't think you realize how intense this will be, that you don't even stand a chance against Goliath. You're not a warrior, kid. Like, this is not a good idea. It's not going to work." So lesson number 5 is that we need to see the times and the ways that God has prepared us for unique, challenging, difficult opportunities in the present. So what David said is he's like, "Listen, I may not be a warrior, right? I have not been in battle, but you know what? I have killed things before. When I'm defending my sheep, I've killed lions, I've killed bears, and I've done it because I've known that God is on my side, that God has granted me the victory because the battle is the Lord's, it's not my own." And so think about your life. When you face Goliath and you want to stand against evil or injustice, oppression, whatever it is, think about the ways that God has prepared you to take on the unique challenges of life. You know, for me, this wasn't like an evil thing at all whatsoever, but when I thought about the major obstacle or hurdle, the giant of motherhood, when I knew I was going to be a mom for the first time, I was a little afraid because houseplants don't typically survive in my home. So how was I going to raise a child? I'd never done it before. It was the first time, but I look back throughout my life. You know, I had done babysitting when I was younger. I had a teaching certificate and had actually taught children, which would make me hopefully more patient as a mother. I had been a college student, so I was used to being sleep deprived, right? All these unusual experiences prepared me for the obstacle, for the giant of motherhood, so that I could be victorious and not afraid as I moved into that area or season of my life. Another example is when the bishop appointed me to plant a church. I had never planted a church before. I had no experience. All of the tests and quizzes they did to see if I'd be a great, phenomenal church planter were kind of lukewarm. I was a gamble. I wasn't a sure thing. And I look back over my life and I'm like, I've never planted a church, but I am a Navy brat. I've moved everywhere. I know how to talk to people. I know how to say hi. I'm not afraid to introduce myself to strangers because that's what happens when you move like 17 times. And I was also in the Peace Corps, where you're put in a little town where you have very little resources and you have to create something sustainable. And church planting really isn't that different from the Peace Corps. So those experiences help prepare me for the giant, for the obstacle, for the difficulty of starting a church. And God has done things in your life that will also help you face whatever it is God is calling you to tackle as well. Lesson number 6 is, when you do decide to stand up to Goliath, be prepared for the world to tell you how to do it and to try to fit you in a box. Okay, so you're ready to be a soldier, King Saul said. Here you go. You can do it. You can take on Goliath, but put on my armor. Use my sword. This is what it looks like to be a warrior. And David said, this is weighing me down. This is not who I am. Don't put me in a box of what it looks like to be the one representing the army as I take on Goliath. I know who I am and I know what I stand for. So know what weighs you down and speak speak up for yourself. And lesson number 7 is to know who you are and what works for you. You know, he knew what didn't work. I will not be put in this box. This is not who I am. And then he goes on to say, here's who I am. And he goes to the riverbed, right? And he gets 5 smooth stones, and he takes the staff and his slingshot, puts the stones in a pouch, and heads off to take on Goliath. I do think it's important to note, small side note, that he took 5 stones, not 1, even though he knew God was calling him to take on Goliath and to stand up for God in truth. He didn't say, oh, sorry, Saul, all I'm going to need is 1 stone because I know it's going to work the first time. He had a plan B, C, D, all available with those additional stones in case he needed a little bit more. So when you're going to tackle something massive, have alternatives, have resources ready, have a plan B or C so that you can still accomplish the same goal that God is calling you to tackle, but with as much innovation and ingenuity as possible as well. Lesson number 8, we see when David actually gets to the battlefield, right? And Goliath sees him and starts to taunt and tease and threaten his very existence. Do not expect this to be easy at any step. And when he sees Goliath and how fearsome and how formidable he is, David doesn't flinch, right? So you need to be prepared for that taunting. And then in verse 47, we see that he's able to stand in his truth. He's like, you know what? You think that you're going to kill me and decimate me and my people? Let me tell you, by the time I'm done with you, you and the whole Philistine army are going to be laying out on the field, and birds and wild animals are going to be eating your carcasses, because this battle belongs not to me, not to you or me, but to the Lord, and the Lord will ensure my victory. So when God has called you into battle, called you to face something, some big obstacle or challenge, stand in the truth of who God is and what God is about and what God has asked you to do. Be faithful to that, and God will do incredible things through you. This leads us to our last 2 lessons. Lesson number 9 is to be quicker than your opponent. When it's time to act, when all the words have been said, don't count to 10, don't hold your breath, don't cool your jets, get to it. And so David took the stones, and he didn't pause or hesitate at all whatsoever, which is good because Goliath had spears and other things that he could have, would have, perhaps was throwing David's way. But he took that stone, he knocked Goliath in the forehead, and so you need to be decisive when it's time to act and time to take on your giant, and also follow through. You know, when Goliath fell, David could have said, thank you, and taken a bow, but he didn't. He went over and he took out Goliath's sword and he cut off his head with it as a way of saying, I am completely done. No one will think that he just fell asleep or he fainted or he's in a coma and will wake up. We know Goliath is done. This battle is over and God has been victorious. You know, we all know the outcome of this encounter, and you can see it. Who did it, how, when, where, why, right there in the field. And lesson 10 is expect others to follow you because you are a leader. So, you know, David, after he takes down Goliath and cuts off his head, the Philistines realize they've lost, right? They totally unexpected, and they start to run and to retreat. And now the soldiers aren't afraid anymore. When one person steps out and says, this is wrong, something has to be done, this person, this thing, this situation, this evil has to be put in its place, other people will follow you. They won't be afraid anymore. And you will now have this vast army able to tackle whatever it is that stands in your way. So know that your faithfulness to stand up to evil and injustice will inspire others to stand with you. And together, we can change the world. Thanks be to God. Amen. Have a great night, guys. I will see you next Sunday.